Kevin Jordan says, is hate a useful tool or is it poison? How much understanding am I supposed to throw at a subject or behavior before I throw up my arms and paint it red forever? That is a great question, and it's been something that's been bothering me a lot lately. Hang on, excuse me. We will be producing, as soon as we get the website open, which I think will be by next show, these fabulous Stratosphere Lounge cups will be available for sale. So that's a question. And here's the answer. When you're dealing with progressives and all of these weenies, you'll hear them say hater. You know, if you don't like something, you're the whole phobe word, right? Phobe actually means afraid of. I'm not afraid of homosexuals, and I am afraid of Islam. I'm afraid of it to the degree that I think it needs to be dealt with seriously. But they call you a hater. You're just filled with hate. Well, this is the important point here. First of all, if you have any kind of a moral code or core at all, there are things that you should hate. You should just murder should be something you hate. Watching guys with rifles shoot little girls in the back of a head and pushing them into a ditch. If that doesn't make you hate that person and that system, then there's something really, really wrong with you if you don't hate those people. When I see ISIS doing what it does, it makes me hate them. And when I see them innocently murdering these innocent civilians and prisoners, it makes me hate them. And when I see them in their convoys, I want to blow them up. And when guys like my friend, who shall remain nameless, but who's watching right now, is actually on the job and helping blow them up. And apparently, I haven't gotten to see it because they had to sanitize the CENTCOM room before I went in there. And they had to sanitize it after I left, too, for different reasons. And because you can soil yourself in there. It's just so cool. Now, you've seen all the gun camera footage from, you saw the first stuff from Iraq, from Gulf War, and then from Iraq and Afghanistan. But I'm told now it's in full color HD. And I would love to see some of those videos because I hate those guys. And it would make me feel good to watch evil be destroyed. If you don't feel good watching evil be destroyed, I think there's something wrong with you. Honestly, if you didn't like watching if you didn't like watching the commandant of the camp getting hung in the camp, the German at the end of the war, what was his name? Anyway, if you don't hate injustice, then I think there's something wrong with you. But that's not really the question. That's part of the question. Yes, you should hate certain things. You should hate injustice. You should hate murder. If somebody's a rapist, you should hate that person. And hate is focused anger. Hate is focused anger. I'm not saying hate is good. I'd love to be in a world where I don't hate anything. But if you have any kind of moral code and there's any kind of injustice, major injustice, then that's worthy of hate. Hating people for their skin color or their nationality is pointless. I mean, I treat people as individuals. There are good people and bad people all around the planet, including in this country, and I tend to hate the ones that are aggressively evil, And when I see people torturing animals, boy, oh boy. So the question then is, if you hate these things and you see so much of them, how do you avoid being consumed by hate? I got to tell you, I'm having a real problem with this. I'm just waking up with nightmares every day. They're not real nightmares like some of them are kind of combat nightmares and fights and that kind of thing. But a lot of them are just anxiety nightmares, and they're getting much more frequent. I mean, I wake up almost every day because in my dreams I try to solve these things. I try to fix them, and that's what I dream about. That's what all I do or read about and work about. And at nighttime I fight this fight, and a couple times I wake up shouting. It's one of the reasons I showed you that flying video. On some level you have to kind of get away from things in order to go back to them again, and you just, I don't know. I feel like I'm so so careful about these kind of comparisons out of the respect for the people that actually do this. But to the degree that it's unpleasant and to the degree that I think it's actually harmful, I have to go back out and do it because somebody has to go back out and do it. And the comparison I almost made and didn't want to make is, a lot of times soldiers don't want to, in fact, pretty much all the time, unless you're a special forces guy or something. There's a lot of times soldiers do not want to go out there and get shot at, but they go because it's their duty and they have to go. What I do is nothing like as dangerous as that and is not nearly worthy of the kind of praise and respect that those guys have earned. But on some degree, it is a little traumatic, and you have a choice. You can walk away from it and find a place like Montana where really seriously, if you just decided to leave it alone, and if you didn't care about the future, you would be able to live out a perfectly happy life. Certainly I would. I'm 56. I'll be 57 in a month or two. I'm sure I could find a place out in Montana and find a way to make a living and not have it bother me. Just never turn on the TV. Who cares about what's happening in Washington? It doesn't touch you, and it will eventually touch you, but it won't touch you for a while. Or you can go to, you can run to the sound of the rhetorical gunfire, and that's kind of what I do, because it's a dirty job, but somebody has to do it. But it's this, I'm so happy to see Hillary sliding, and I can't think of a worse person for president. So I have a fair amount of enjoyment watching her lose it, and it looks like justice is coming to her, and that's lovely. And it's not a question of Bernie Sanders. I don't hate Bernie Sanders. I don't like him. I don't think he's a nice guy. But I don't hate Bernie Sanders. I hate Hillary Clinton. I don't hate Bernie Sanders. But I am terrified of the support that he gets from young people. And it's only recently I realized, we been talking about these millennials and how, the ones that you see on camera. I know there's a lot of millennials watching right now, and I don't mean to include you in that, and I apologize. So let me just get that said. But the thing that I just really realized is how perfectly they've been bred to be socialists, how perfectly engineered they've been to become socialists. Nobody wins, nobody gets the big trophy, and nobody goes home without a trophy. So in capitalism, somebody wins because they work harder and they try harder and they're smarter and whatever the case may be. Sometimes they're luckier, but it's never just luck. And some people lose. And these people that we've raised now don't win and don't lose. Everybody's equal. Think about it. When you stop giving trophies for first place and second and third and everybody else goes home without anything, and you replace that with every single person getting an identical participant trophy, in order to not hurt anybody's feelings, I was concentrating so much on the hurt feelings and the weakness that generates in these kids. But what I hadn't fully realized until about a week ago was what perfect, absolutely perfect indoctrination that is for socialism, right? These kids have never had a chance to excel. They've never had a chance to excel. They've never been pulled back from excelling. They've never failed. They've never succeeded. They don't know the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat. And so while I was concentrating on their emotional lack of development, it's only recently that I began to realize just how perfectly socialized, perfectly engineered they are to be socialists. Nobody wins, nobody loses, nobody has more than anybody else. No one's allowed to be better than anyone else. The only competition these people have is to compete to see who's the biggest victim. And finally, they can't take care of themselves. There are people who are applying for jobs they're 25 years old, and somebody says, hey, I need that report now. They go home, and the next day the boss gets a call from their mom. What's going to happen to these kids when their parents die? They want somebody to take care of them. And they don't care about freedom because they've been so free. The idea that they are socialized to not want the opportunity. They want the security. And honestly, it's terrifying. It's terrifying how and again, go back to the social justice weenies thing on that I mentioned earlier with Triumph on the Facebook page. Just look at the men. I mean, one of them is clearly gay, and that's fine. There's some gay warriors, And I have nothing against the gay thing at all. It's a question of strength that I'm really talking about. And then the rest of them, most of them are, they're 50% overweight, and all of them are just so small. I just want to ask these guys, and I probably will, I want to ask these men, what do you think about the women in this class? I mean, not individually, what do you think about women today? And ask the women, what do you think about men today? And the men are checking out. They can't be men for real, so they go to video games. Why do you think Call of Duty is so popular? Why do you think all these first-person shooters are so popular? Why do you think that every time something like Skyrim comes out or something, you sell billions of dollars of these games? It's because young men are not allowed to be men in the real world, so they just detach from the real world. They're not interested in dating anymore. These women are super, super sensitive, and they're really angry, and they don't want anything to do with it. They're just getting off the boat, and they go into their little room, and they turn on their computer, and they get to be men in Call of Duty. They get to be men for 17 hours at a stretch or whatever. And no one's really talking about that, but that's what's driving the video game thing. And there are some girl gamers too, women gamers. Otherwise, I'd be, put up against a wall. And they are also in it because they don't have a chance to compete. And no one, by the way, it's interesting, isn't it, that when you get into the world of video games, I've never really had this thought before, but when you get into the video games, there's a score, because I've done a bunch of, it's been a long time, Counter-Strike. I played Counter-Strike. I like that a lot. But everybody's ranked. There's an exact, very precise score of how many kills you got, who got the most, who got the least. Everybody did great. Both teams won. Everybody did a good job. It's rigidly competitive and extremely, extremely clear. And that's why they're so popular. And that's why especially boys retreat into video games, because they don't have a chance to have these kind of success, or they don't even have this kind of fear. They don't have this kind of stress. The most stress they get is playing a video game, and that can be stressful. By the way, I mean, if you really get into a game, then you can feel, your adrenaline gets pumping for sure. And the problem is, in a game, obviously, in a video game, if your adrenaline is pumping, you've got nowhere to put it. It just sits in your tissues, and you end up smashing the monitor. If you're out playing a game of baseball or football or whatever, you get fired up, you get adrenaline, and you get to burn it off, and that feels good. But these man children just get adrenalized, and it just sits in their tissues and destroys them. And they're unbelievably unfit. Shoulder's healing nicely, by the way, and I haven't been able to do any upper body work for a couple of weeks now, and I'm feeling it a little bit. But just before the surgery, I used to go to the gym every day. In my early 30s, I went every day, and without a trainer, and I did 5 or 6 exercises, and I did them badly. But I really worked hard. And just a day or two before the surgery, I remember I was just getting changed, and I just said, I've never been in this kind of shape before. This is the best shape I've ever been in ever. I'm pushing 60. And their lives are going to be shortened, but not just shortened. Their lives are cheapened by their inability to do anything. And by the way, it's one thing to be fat as you get older, because look, the metabolism slows down, the opportunities for exercise disappear. You have a job. Most of us, during our job, we have to sit at a desk. So, it's one thing, Eisenfire, the guardians of the Stratosphere Lounge with his flaming sword, just called me out for completely outing him. That's apparently his entire life. And he's told me that in person, too. He told me how, they're just automatically assume that he's a rapist, and, so, okay, fine. So we'll just go play with other. That's another term that Insult uses. It said frat boys is an offensive term. Why don't we just call them rapist Americans? He just destroyed those kids. But yeah, so that's pretty much it, I guess, for that. But you're going to get what you pay for, and I don't hate these millennials. There are times when I get angry at them, but I don't hate them. It's not their fault. I hate the people that did it to them. And part of that is parents who were too overly protective, but part of it also are these socialist teachers who know better. And those people are trying to destroy this on purpose. And the reason, look, socialism is taking from people who can do things and giving it to people who can't. And the reason that these teachers have taught the socialism, and the reason that there's socialism in the first place, and the reason that anybody liked socialism or communism is it's a way for people who are too lazy or too stupid to work to steal stuff from people who do. And I hate that, because people will just stop. If they have the legal ability to take 93% of what you make through coercion, people will just stop. They'll either leave or they'll stop. You know, I keep wondering about a Bernie presidency and how awful it would be, and then I suddenly realize, well, wait a minute, he is not actually the dictator. There is a Congress, right? Well, we haven't had a Congress for 8 years. We've had the House for 6, and we've had the Senate for, 2 now? And we've never stopped Obama, but we didn't stop Obama because he was black. I think when it comes time to stopping President Bernie Sanders, I like to think they'd have a few more votes than that, but, you know, it's pretty scary. It's really pretty scary.